Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WireWheel Privacy Weekly Rollup. My name is Rick Buck. I'm Chief Privacy Officer here at WireWheel, and this week we're going to talk about data minimization. I was inspired to speak on this subject based on an article that I read earlier in the week by a gentleman named Robert Braun. Robert's an attorney at Jeffer Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell. He talked about the importance of data minimization, particularly as it relates to the new state laws that we're seeing show up in an increasing rate. So as I spoke about last week, the last 2 years were pretty busy ones from a privacy point of view. California passed the CCPA and the CPRA. Virginia adopted the CDPA. Colorado approved the CPA. Each of these laws have new obligations on how businesses collect, process, and protect personal information. And by the way, the obligations that are called out in these are going to be challenging even for businesses that are currently trying to comply with existing laws for things like the EU GDPR. I also discussed last week that Florida, Washington, Indiana, and DC, all in the first week of the new year, introduced their new privacy acts. So laws exist, laws are coming, and lots to think about. As we think about these laws and GDPR, one of the common elements between them is that they all include the concept of data minimization. And so what is data minimization? Data minimization really is based on three fairly simple components. Only collect the data that you need to provide the goods and services that you offer. Don't keep the data, sorry about that. Don't keep the data any longer than is necessary, and only grant access to it to as few people as necessary or as possible. So why focus on data minimization? And that seems like it might be an obvious question. But first and foremost, data minimization is a foundational building block to building a privacy compliant data collection program. Data minimization has some obvious benefits. It makes it easier to achieve reasonable security. It reduces your exposure should you have a privacy incident. It allows for more efficient data management practices. It potentially removes friction points for responses to your data subjects. So the less data that you have, the less places you have to look for it, the easier it is to fulfill those DSAR requests. And certainly last but not least, having a good, strong data minimization program is all part of your customer trust story. And that's an important part of your story, nonetheless. Invoking a data minimization program is a relatively simple thing to do. We start off with some basic concepts. One, identify all the purposes for which you need to collect personal information. Pretty simple. Identify the minimum amount of information you need to actually achieve those purposes. Identify the amount of time that you're going to need to retain that data, and that amount of time is as long as necessary. That amount of time is going to have HR implications. It might have legal obligations. It might have order fulfillment obligations. There are a number of things that you'll need to consider, and so take all of that into account as you're thinking about how long necessary actually is. Control all of your internal and access to that information. And that control is based on policies that you have, controls to support those policies, and audits against all of those controls and policies. And then, of course, disclose all of this stuff in your privacy-related policies and at the point of collection where you're asking for personal information. In addition to minimizing data, it's also really important that you document the process by knowing and disclosing things like categories of personal data that you collect, the categories of data subjects from whom you're collecting the data, the categories of recipients of the data, again, the retention and destruction policies, and the systems or applications on which personal information is collected, just to name a few. When you think that running an efficient and compliant privacy program is complicated and hard to do, take it one step at a time. Starting with the adoption of a data minimization mentality is a good place to begin. And that's my thought for the week. So thank you for tuning into the WireWheel Weekly Privacy Rollup. Join me again next week when we talk about the latest news in the world of privacy. Please watch WireWheel's LinkedIn page for future dates and times. If you have any questions about today's topic or any other privacy-related matters, please email us at marketing@wirewheel.io. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.